just fine. Yeah. I was looking forward to sit in the backyard today. Yeah, with this weather. Yeah. We was kind yesterday. We was kind yesterday.
Yes.
I think so. Maybe you have to go home and look first. I think it is.
So how are you all doing? You good?
Yeah.
Still have blood flow? Why don't we stand up for a second?
Yeah.
Stand up. To the right. Wave to the left. It's good. Any yoga instructors? Hand, foot. The praying dog.
Du kom här därför. What is this for?
Juniper. I'll find that for you. I think it's very cleansing.
So are you guys getting filled? You getting what you came for? That's awesome. So that's the first question. Is the question of why. So Rosie kind of touched on this quite a bit, and it's ultimately asking yourself the question, why did you come today?
See you.
Isn't that awesome? Are you glad that you did? Now it's interesting because there was an interesting moment where we weren't sure we were going to be able to get here, but I realized one of the driving factors of why we pushed through and found a solution. We did what seemed impossible because essentially all flights were canceled because of a major snowstorm. The closest time we could have gotten here was probably the afternoon. And so we looked at that. You'd have to ask yourself why. Why did we push forward anyway? And I remember clearly there was one of the thoughts that I had was I already knew that there was going to be about 30 of our own team members here. I knew Rosie and Adam were plenty capable of leading the event, but I knew that another good chunk of you, 40 or 50 of you, were coming from outside the country. That somewhere along the line you were getting on airplanes and you were sacrificing your income to buy plane tickets. Maybe some of you stayed the night here. Most of you probably left families or other activities that need to be done. And I realized that you were going to be sitting in the room. And I imagined for a moment that I realized that if we weren't getting there, probably the rest of the outside speakers weren't going to be able to be there as well. And suddenly I realized that you might have an interesting training today. And now I sure it would have been great. After you've watched Rosie and Adam present, you know that you would have had your needs met as well. But that was a driving factor of we knew that we couldn't let you down that way. And it's not so much that maybe you would have been disappointed, but I knew that Rosie and Adam might have been in a little bit of a panic about how this event. They had worked really hard to make this event possible. They set a declaration several months ago. They wanted events to be one of the primary driving forces because that's what really creates conversion and momentum in an area. That's how you get more and more people interested. It breaks down the social barriers. It breaks down things like, it creates like social proof. It creates acceptance. And so events become critical. And so Adam had made this declaration months ago, planning. He put a goal out there. He wanted 100 people to be in this room, and he nearly did that. Nearly met the goal. And so I knew when that much energy had been invested, when you've invested that much energy, that we had a why that pushed us through. And so starting with why as one of your incredible things, and I'll tell you a little bit about my personal doTERRA journey. When I first became open to the idea, it wasn't that doTERRA had been presented to me yet, but the why came first. I remember standing in my hallway in my house, and I remember I was getting into one of my other 40th birthdays, as I'm way into my 40s. I'm almost 80. No, just teasing. But I was already in my 40s, and I was standing in my hallway, and I realized that my kids, so I have my oldest daughter is 18 now. I have a daughter that's 16. I have a daughter that's 10. Now at the time, my daughter that's 18 was only a daughter that was 14. But I realized that day was going to come when they were going to graduate. There was an interesting thing going on in our home, and that was that there wasn't a lot of income. And so as a result, there was no savings. And as no savings, that meant that there probably wouldn't, the education has some interesting implications to it. But even more than that, because there are things like student loans, or you could come to Ireland where they educate you for free, right? it's like right. And so there's all these things that were playing through my mind. But one of the things that I really realized that if something didn't change quickly, that retirement was going to be an impossibility. And in other words, that was something that would not happen, mainly because there was no additional money outside of work. And so I realized that I had to be open to ideas that would accelerate my income, that would make my income more than I could work for. And so that was my why. It started to build, and I realized that I needed to identify a solution. So then when the person came with doTERRA and they said, hey, this is an option to do that, I was suddenly in a space of openness, and I was able to accept that. And so if you have your notes, what I want you to do is write down the questions that I show up on the board. And the first one is why. And if you're using your notes as a little bit of journal, and as you think about it, or if different things touch your heart, or you feel inspired, or anything like that, start to write down why. Why did you come today? Why did I sacrifice my Saturday, my time, my income to my family time, my enjoyment, my other things that I do, the pub? Why did I sacrifice that to sit here? And if you can start to identify that in any way, then you'll start to understand what's motivating you. Okay? Now, the other thing about why is understand that as you meet your needs, you'll run into what I call a why crisis. So in my doTERRA career, I've come across 3 why crises. When I realized that I was generating enough money from doTERRA that I no longer had to work, there was a moment. I remember I quit my job the very month that my doTERRA check covered all of our bills. Now that's called financial self-reliance, right? When your passive residual income meets all of your bills and needs. Okay? Now as soon as you achieve that amount, whatever it is, then you have achieved financial freedom. So take just a moment now and write down that number for you. So in other words, if I had this much money every month, how much would that be? And just make a note, whether that's $1,500, $3,000, $7,000, whatever it is. But when you make this amount, you are covering, in other words, you could be self-reliant on that amount of income. Okay? Now this starts to set a target for you. Now this target then becomes what? All right? So now you've started to establish a why. Why am I doing these things? What is the core motivating force? And then what is it? So for me, at that period of time, it was a number. It was a figure. I had to make a certain amount. Now, I had realized my very first thought was, if I could create $300 a month through a network marketing company, that would be phenomenal. Now, I did that my first month. I made $450 my first month. And now I had to, because I couldn't afford the LRP. Right? So I didn't have the $100 for the next, or 100 quid, right? Is that your term for bucks, right? 100 quid. So I didn't have the 100 quid for the next round. And so I did an interesting thing. I wouldn't let my wife buy any oils for herself through the LRP. We ordered the 6-pack of Introduction to Essential Oil Kits. It's exactly 100 PV, right? So I put that on my order and set it as a qualified order. And then my goal then was to place those 6 kits, the very best that I could, so that by the next month I had enough money for the loyalty reward. Isn't that cool? That's pretty cool. Now, fortunately, the next month I did make a little bit more. By the end of the year, doTERRA sent me the 1099, which is the income report for the first year, was just under $8,000 in about 7 months. So now if you divide that back, then I averaged about $1,000 a month of income throughout my first year. Isn't that cool? Cool. Now it's gone up dramatically. I make probably $50 an hour, regardless if I'm awake or asleep or talking or not talking, or in New York or in Ireland. It's pretty cool when you think about that, because it's a residual channel. It just continues to grow and produce. Now it magnifies, of course, when you put energy into it. All right. So now you've figured out why you're motivated, what it is you're trying to create. So I needed to create that $4,000 a month then. That was kind of the number that I had. In order to be financially self-reliant, I had to get to $4,000 a month because that covered our basic bills. Now I'll give you an interesting insight about money. And that is whatever your money habit is currently is what it will be in the future. Okay? Whatever your money habit is currently is what it will be in the future, regardless of the amount. Now, I know this for a fact because I've watched it. And there's no amount of money that will ever change your pattern. So in other words, if you spend all of your money now, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 or 30,000 or 50,000, you will still spend it all.
The more you get, you'll spend.
Right. The bills get bigger, right? So instead of the $100 car payment, you now have the $1,000 car payment. Instead of the $1,500 house payment, you now have the $5,000 house payment. It expands. Also, everything is based on habits. So everything that you do is habitual patterns. And so if you don't like what your habits are currently creating in your life, if you don't like the cycle that it's creating, the scenario that it's creating, then you just have to look at your habits. What are the habits that I'm doing? So how are you going to create this number? And so that comes down to team building if you choose doTERRA. So it's all about building a team, and it comes down to this question: who? So I know why I'm creating something. I know what I'm trying to create. I know how to create it. And this is a pattern or system, correct? And so now it comes down to who are the players. Now this little document here, this is a new one that we just produced. We've actually had a model of this available on our website since the very beginning. But it's a leads manager. It's a names list. So when you're taking your names list here, it allows you to track your prospect all the way through whether or not you called them, whether or not you presented an oil class to them, whether or not they enrolled, and whether or not they want to host a class for you. So you might have 100 people on your list. Now the cool thing about who is your who is going to largely come from your network. There's a confusion sometimes in business building between a names list or a contacting list and network. Okay? So all of you have a network, and your network is built up of people that you know. And where people get in trouble in the finding state is when they burn up their network, right? Or I've used up my warm market. I've run out of people I know. Many of you said that or heard that? Now, there's a distinction. If you recategorize the people you know as network, and your network feeds your contact list, now you've created a new scenario. So say you know 100 people in your network, and say there's 5 of those people inside your network that will refer people to you. Say they referred 6 people a year. And if you had 5 people doing that, that's quite a number of people, right? That's a lot of referrals. Now, just to put that in context, I've personally enrolled probably around 40 or 50 people. And the team is now 30,000 people. Okay? Now, the difference is my network still works for me. There's a handful of my network that will continue to populate my names list. And so I have new prospects that come in periodically, right? So I have new enrollments. Now that's expanded, and because I network so well, my network now is reaching outside in all parts of the world. It's pretty amazing. So I got a note just a couple of days ago from a gal in Singapore who enrolled in about 2 minutes of interaction with me online. Now how did that occur? Now that occurred because I've so powerfully created network, or the concept of network, that people are referring to me. People and systems. Isn't that cool? You're all, I got some really big eyeballs on that one. It's really cool. Okay, so who? Now, here is the question of the day. If you were hiring a CEO to run one of your multi-million-dollar divisions, what attributes would you want that person to have? Okay, let's write down some attributes. What would you want that person to do? And remember, this is a multi-million-dollar asset. What's that? Okay, so you'd want to, so these are things you value, like, are these away values, or what do you call them? Core values. Right, Rosie? All right, so you value commitment in that person. Okay, what else? Honesty. And I heard respect.
Decisiveness.
Decisive. Loyalty.
Responsibility.
Loyal. Responsible. Responsible. Okay, so what other words did I hear? What's that word? Belief. Okay. Okay.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Professional.
All right. Professional.
And someone with good people skills.
Okay. So people person.
People
Yeah.
person.
People helper.
Self-driven.
Okay. So service, would that be a good one? So I heard one that like a people. Okay. So like a servant. Servant-minded. Would that be a good word? Okay. Now, hopefully what you're doing on your own sheet of paper is that you're creating values, in other words, attributes that you would prefer for your CEO. All right? Now, this is a really important list because this becomes the core value set of what you're trying to identify. So if you want to go away from here and you want to find builders and you want to know how to build a large team and how to do it relatively effortlessly. Now, don't get effort confused with dedication or commitment or time or things like that. So you don't want to get those words confused. So these are, but we need to create a list of attributes that you value for your CEO. Now, here's the next question. It is the next question. And it's so important, it closed the machine down. Do these qualities describe you? Okay? Now, if you've made a list, if you've gone down a list on your sheet, if you have a list of attributes on your sheet, what I want you to do right now is take a moment and on a scale to 1 to 10, rank yourself on each of these qualities. Okay? So if you've had If you said, okay, I want somebody that's committed, I want you to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is my commitment level? Okay? If I want somebody that's honest, what does that mean to me? How am I interpreting that? On a scale of 1 to 10, am I an honest person? Okay? Decisive, on a scale of 1 to 10, how decisive am I? Okay. Are you all getting a good list? Going? What are you discovering about yourself? Are you 10s on all of them? Oh, yes, I am. Awesome. Okay, now it's on the values that you value. Now, the reason this is important is because of this principle. Like attracts like. So we hear it all the time, right? Birds of a feather flock together. Now, if you right now took an assessment of your top 5 closest associations, I want you to go ahead and list those top 5 associations. So write my top associations, and then create a list. Who are those 5 people? Who are the 5 people that you're always around, that you're always hanging out with, that you think of, that you call when there's a problem, people that you admire, that you go to for advice. Now, all of you, now, when I go to a movie, it goes like this. I think we'll go to a movie. Ring, ring. Hey, Seth, have you seen this movie? Right? Is it good? Right? Do you guys do this? On anything? Like you're thinking of buying a car. Who do you call? You're going to buy a new car. Who do you call? Right? You call Adam. Rosie calls her dad, right? And why do you call that person? Right, something about their philosophy or their position or their beingness in your world you've put up at a high level. In other words, you're trusting them at a deep level to help you make decisions. So now, if you were looking at your list of your top 5 associations that you have on your list there. Now, all of you have some names written down on that 5 top associations. Now, as you're looking at that list, do those people represent what you want to become? It's kind of a sobering thought, isn't it? On some. Could be a real sobering thought. But to the people that you're most closely associating, with the exception of family maybe, is, now I say maybe, I do say maybe, because there could be some instances where your family is so negative or toxic that it might be preventing you from moving forward. Okay? So now I'm a major advocate of family, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I believe that the family structure is powerful in creating your sense of well-being, in stabilizing not only societies and countries and everything like that, but also your emotional security in the world is dependent on this. But when you think about it, if those relationships are highly toxic and negative, are they helping you become what you want to become? And how do you manage that relationship in your life? Catching this principle? This is probably by far one of the top success principles in the world. It's about association, understanding attraction. Like attracts like. Because the biggest question among people striving to build a doTERRA business is oftentimes, how come I cannot attract builders? Why will no one on my team do what I'm doing? Any of that sound familiar? Yeah. Okay. Now it has to do with this. It has to do with the way that you're projecting yourself and the way that you're representing the values that you want to portray. Now here's the other part about when it comes to attracting builders. And that is, you need to remember that somebody that's committed to building, especially right off the bat, builders follow leaders. And leadership is represented by the extent or intensity of the level of your personal commitment and dedication to your why. Isn't that amazing? Now this took me a long time to really grasp these principles that I'm sharing today, but I promise you they are the key to becoming a very large builder. Okay? These are key core principles that will help you break through. If you're stuck it probably has to do with some of these things that I'm touching on right now. Okay? All right. So builders follow leaders. Now, if no one's following you, what is the problem?
You're not leading?
You're not leading. Now, statistically in doTERRA, 80% of people never enroll another person. 80% of people getting into doTERRA as accounts never enroll another person. Okay. Now, probably about 4 to 5% actually get their products paid for. Now, if we come into leadership, probably about 1% are leading. And then you get into the levels of leadership, and that comes down to how many presidential diamonds are there. Sensing the magnitude? Now here's what I want you to understand. It has nothing to do with the model. The model works every time, 100% of the time. It works every time, in every scenario, in every place on the earth. Fail safe, 100% guaranteed. And it goes like this. If you ever doubt that, here's the challenge. Go out, get somebody to purchase a kit, and try to get doTERRA to not send you a check. It'll happen every time. If you get someone else to transact for a kit, doTERRA will send you a check, unless your loyalty rewards is less than 100 PV, in which case you will not get the check. Okay? So here's the great commandment of builders. Thou shalt not leave the back office without 100 PV being set on your loyalty rewards program at all times. Okay? I get far too many calls. I already ran my order and I was just trying to figure out what I wanted. How come I didn't get my fast start bonus? Did you leave the system without 100 PV? Yeah, that'll be a 50 on there. Well, that is why. Right. It's a computer, and the computer is not compassionate. It does not understand that you were just looking for product. Okay? Or deciding what to put on your order, or even that you ordered already. It only knows that your PV is set at 100 as the template. Okay? So that's, by the way, one of the things that I teach all of my new builders right off the bat. The great commandment. Thou shalt not leave the back office without 100 PV set on your loyalty reward template if you want to earn a check. Okay? All right.
Yeah.
Here's your job. This is the way that I view my business. And so I view my business. This was actually a revelation to me, because I did get stuck at Diamond. It's a terrible place to be stuck. Right? I was the highest income earning diamond in the company. It was so sad. I still cry about it this day. But here's the thing. This is what happened. I was not viewing my business this way. And so I had 2 CEO chairs filled by non-CEOs. In other words, I was investing time and energy into the wrong people. And so as a result, time was dragging on and on and on as I tried to make these people become that person. Right? I gave them some enrollments, I built a leg for them, I did all kinds of things, right? I'm doing all that stuff. Why? Because they're not building it, so somebody has to build it. It has to be me if I want it. That's how the story goes. And most of you are probably building your organizations that way. You're like, well, Mom will never help, but you know, if I get her built up to silver, right, then I can be diamond, if I can get her there, right? Because now you're working with 3 teams. Now, how do I know this? Because I did it, right? I have Mom. Fortunately, Mom really loves me. Now, as a matter of fact, I picked her up, this is Jennifer's mom, picked her up at the airport here recently, and we're driving down the road. And all of a sudden, she starts to cry. And she says, Rob, I just want to thank you for what you've done for us. Because our life is never going to be the same again. And you don't even know what you did for us. Now, we did build a leg under her, but I didn't build her to silver. She had to identify her own leaders. And she got herself to silver. and her check went over $10,000. Isn't that amazing? It was amazing because the leg that we did focus on, we found CEOs. And those CEOs built in a massive way. Blue Diamond, one of them, underneath her. I've got another one just across line from them, just about ready to go diamond. My qualifying line for Blue Diamond. It's amazing. And it's liberated 3 members of my family are 6-figure residual income earners because of that event. Oh, wow. Now, there was a time where I realized I was stuck and I was stuck and I was stuck and I couldn't figure out how to create, how to go to the next level. Why was I stuck? And then I'm just going to put this out here because I want to teach you my strategy. It doesn't have to be your strategy. You don't have to believe a word that I'm saying. Okay? So I'm going to put that out premise. But I will tell you that I found the answer by praying. Okay? Now, if you don't like the word prayer, you can use the word meditation. You can sit with your own thoughts. Somewhere, somehow, there has to be a power greater than yourself. However you define that. For me, that's God. For you, it could be the universe. It could be whatever it is. But there's a power greater than you. And if you're going to do great things, you have to learn how to call on powers greater than you believe you can do. This is called faith. Faith is when you exercise that power, recognizing that you don't have it yourself, that you temporarily don't have it yourself. No, there's no way that I could do what I do without faith and belief in those higher powers to guide me, because I'm mentoring and I have people's lives in my hand. And if it was not for the inspiration that I receive on the moment for an individual's lives, there's things that I could not know. And I would not know what to say. And that's how you change lives, because as a Blue Diamond and higher, you have to operate at a higher level. You have to go beyond yourself, because it's an enormous stewardship. Thousands of people are depending on you all over the world in their belief patterns. And unless you can step into a space in which you can draw upon powers higher than yourself, then you will get stuck and overwhelmed and ultimately crushed by it. Okay? Not to sound terrible or anything, but geez. All right. Now I put that as a premise because what I did is I prayed and asked. I asked the question, why am I held up? What do I need to do? Now, Seth talked about a principle that I've taught in the past, and that is if you ask the question, the answer will come. You have to get your thoughts clear enough to formulate a question. And if you can get to a point that you can ask a question, then the inspiration comes. The answer will appear. It will show up in front of you because you've prepared your mind to receive it. Okay? So I asked this question. Why is it that I'm stuck? And I got this answer. You must open the space. Now, I thought about that, and I realized that all of us have 24 hours in a day. You have a bucket filled with water, right? And if you start pulling cups of water out, in other words, you have time dedicated to your job, time dedicated to your family, time dedicated to your service, time dedicated to mowing your lawn, time dedicated to exercise, time dedicated to your education. You have all these things, but pretty soon your bucket runs out. There's no more water to pass around. No more space that you can fill. Now here's the principle. You open the space, it creates a void, and voids are always filled. Did you catch that principle? If you open the space, it creates a void, and voids are always filled. So what I did is I realized that I was focusing. So line 1 began to break down because the CEO was not stepping into the space. Line 2 was going well. Line 3 began to break down because the CEO was not stepping into the space. Line 4 was going well. And what I realized is because these two, the first and third, were not doing well, I began to focus all of my energy on those lines. In other words, trying to fill the gap. because the leaders didn't step into their space, it created a void, but I took it upon myself to fill the void. So what I did is I realized, I meditated on this principle, and I realized that to open the space, I needed to start focusing on where the growth was and open the void, create a void on these lines. I did. Within 3 months, I found 4 highly committed builders. And some of those names you're probably already starting to hear in the company. And you've probably realized that if I were to list off my core leaders, you'd know most of them. Because they're high-level people. Go ahead.
Where did you put them? The 4 new people.
I enrolled a new builder on the 4th line. On this one. In other words, I opened up a CEO spot. And I put the CEO down on the 4th level. Now that CEO is almost Blue Diamond. And that CEO is putting so much pressure upwards that builders have started to activate above. It's cool. Now I did the same thing here. And actually what happened here is I had enrollership on a person on the 4th level. They've been with me almost since the beginning. But about 3 years into the thing, they called me up and said, hey, my wife's kind of liking the oils and she wants to learn more about them. So I go down and I sit at their table. And she says, now, I just want to tell you that we don't like network marketing. And I'm really interested in the oils. I really like them, and I'll probably share them a little bit, but we do not want to hurt our precious reputations. Because he was a chiropractor and she was a midwife, and they had local practice in their community, and they were very esteemed in their minds. Okay? And so they said, we will not, I don't want my husband to promote this or anything because it will harm his practice. Right? People will begin to disrespect us. And so I said, that's fine. I said, that's great. Now she got up to go to the bathroom after that lecture. Her husband leaned forward and said, can you make $100,000 a year at this? And I said, yeah, I do. He jumped physically in his seat. He goes, really? And then she came out of the bathroom and he sat up and looked like nothing had happened. Sat there. And then I was like, dude, back me up here. No, he just sat there, just as neutral as Switzerland.
How many people from Switzerland do we have?
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So, but anyway, so he was like that, and so she shooed me out. His friend showed up. Well, you will need to go now because one of Canute's friends is here. Shooed me out the door. About a month later, she calls me and says, ask me some more questions. And then about 3 months later, after that, she calls up and says, I don't know what we were thinking. We're all in. And I said, why? What happened? We went to a conference and somebody said, why do you care about the opinions of others who are not paying your bills? And she was like, why? And the guy said, well, for instance, is your mom giving you guff about what you're doing? He goes, just say to her, Mom, that's great. That's great that you feel that I shouldn't be involved in this nasty network marketing company. But I want you to know, my car bill is due. And if you're willing to write me a $600 check for that car, then I might be happy to listen to you. Or if your friend is coming up and saying, hey, you shouldn't really be involved in that scam. That's terrible. Why are you wasting time pushing people? Right? Selling your snake oil. So you're pushing your stuff, and then you just turn to your friend and you say, that's a great opinion, but and I'd be glad to adopt your opinion. If you're willing to write a check for my mortgage payment right now for $1,500, then I just might listen to you. And so they caught this vision that it really doesn't matter what other people think about how you choose to generate income, because it's your dream. And you're responsible for it. And if this is the mechanism, I can promise you this is as worthy a mechanism as any other mechanism that exists. I remember having one of my team members, I went out to Wisconsin, I was sitting in the house, and one of my team members, I was standing in the kitchen, she was just sitting on the sofa going through her back office or something, and then all of a sudden she says, you must really like what you do. And I said, why is that? She said, because everything you do helps people. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? Well, if you're sharing the business, you're helping them with money and income and personal development. And if you're helping them, if you're showing them the product, you're helping them with their health and their well-being. And I thought, you're right. I do love it. I love what I do. I sleep very well at night. And I get up very excited on what I get to share with people. Because it's such an amazing gift. All right. Now, are you catching the principle of the CEOs? Go ahead.
Can I just clarify, when you found a builder by looking into someone's downline, that the highest, so that person's presidential, that is your qualifying limit. That your qualifying limit turns into that person in below. It's no longer now that.
Right. As long as I'm the enroller. My qualifying legs on 2 lines are on the 4th level. Now the cool thing is that pressure has ignited people so much that now this builder has re-engaged and just went gold and is on her way to diamond. She's finding builders now because she stepped into the space. She's starting to own the CEO chair. She realized this is how it happened. She came to an event. She sat at a table and they went around the table and everybody was saying what team they're on. They're saying, I'm on so-and-so's leg and I'm over here. They got to her and they said, well, whose team are you on? And she said, I'm on Rod's team. And everybody laughed and said, we're all on Rod's team. But they said, who's your sponsor? Rod. You're on Rod's front line. And she said she could see the disgust on everyone's face. And she got so embarrassed that she got up and she had to leave the table because she felt so ashamed that she had one of the most coveted positions on planet Earth. And she treated it like garbage. Spit on you. That's how I've done. Spit on me every day. Family reunions. Look at me. Spit on your opportunity. Terrible. Well, I showed her. I got double qualifying lines there now. But she's going after it now. She's regained that CEO seat. Go ahead.
You mentioned that you can exchange the position of the CEO down from the front line down to the 4th line. How do you do that?
Right. You don't have to change positions. You don't have to change anybody. But if you're the enroller, if you're the personal enroller, you can count anyone you're personal enroller on, no matter where they appear on that leg. Okay? Now the key is you can only have one CEO per leg that you're counting for rank. I mean, you can have many good leaders on the line, but there's only one that you're counting.
But it gets up to a power of 2 now, in a way.
Right. If now this could break power of 3, right? So it just depends on what your strategies and what your goals are, or how you're developing, or how you're strategizing as you're building. For example, if you use a simple principle like only build under committed loyalty reward owners, then your power of 3 will probably sustain. Right? My power of 3 sustains fairly well, and the only places I have trouble is where the individuals are not committed. Right? And so where it's been built underneath them or anything like that. Now I have 6 legs, of course, and so I have lines that pre-qualify other lines. Things like that. I built in security. Okay. All right. Now this concept for me was very liberating, because now it takes your search from you visualizing the business as you having to enroll everyone on the planet Earth. Imagine how that must feel when you're thinking that way and somebody else comes into your country. When you think that you have to enroll or populate this whole entire structure, right? Then you become territorial and you start feeling angry and things like that, encroached upon. Now, but if you realize that you're trying to identify 4 CEOs to run multi-million-dollar organizations, do you think there's 4 people for each of us?
Yes.
There is. There is. Matter of fact, we could probably walk down the hall here and find somebody that has never heard of doTERRA. I'm sure you could walk out of your houses, no matter where they are, and just go down the street and probably not talk to more than 3 people and find somebody that's never heard of it before. Okay. And so sometimes we get really narrow in our view of what's possible, or saturation. Do you know 2 of my most rapid growing legs right now are in Utah with brand new builders that have recently enrolled? Isn't that amazing? My 6th line is built a lot on Utah, and almost all the activity is in Utah, the most saturated place on the planet. It's awesome. You guys are a long ways from there. Now, strategically, the secret to building strong lines is compounding the CEOs or compounding the builders. Okay? So I'm going to draw you a little thing here. Help you recognize building strategy. Now, I use the concept of CEOs as my core building strategy. Okay? So if you're thinking about it, there's you, and when you're starting out, there's no one. So the only place to go is your front line. Now you can either, if you enroll one person, you have a choice to go another front line or to start stacking. Okay? Now stacking creates some interesting problems. So I go and I start enrolling down, just stacking, because this person is not committed, that person's not committed, and so I just keep stacking people down. Okay? Now this, what happens is if this person ignites down here, then these people will all qualify as elite, and you'll get all the dynamic compression.
But sorry, they have to be on the RFP.
Right, if they're running an LRP. But believe me, if you crack a diamond, they will all be on LRP. They will. I just had this happen. Somebody's running their thing, and then they all of a sudden 1 month there was a promotion, they ran a full order, and they got a big fat check in the mail. And so they called me up, should I send it back? I said, no, send it to me. No, I didn't. I said, right, you do not deserve that. No, I said, that's yours. That's what's happening. Your business is producing that. And I go, the way you get that every month is by running the LRP at 100 PV. Guess whose account's always at 100 PV? Okay, theirs is. And the cool thing about that is even though they weren't lifting a finger, I found out that she has been going through breast cancer. And so she's been, pretty much out of the circle, trying to recover and things like that. And she sent me a note thanking me for continuing the organization, because that check is what sustained them while she couldn't work. And so I don't want you to ever feel bad that somebody is or isn't doing things, because you never know whose life you're transforming. You never know what somebody's pain or aches or trials are that they're going through that's causing them that they can't step into that leadership role for whatever reason. And they call you blessed. They call you blessed. And you have no idea how much impact you're making. Now I know I got one line, now I affectionately call those lines lunch buckets. Right. I have these lunch bucket seats here, they're just eating the paycheck as it comes up. Now here's the thing I want you to remember. You make about the same anyway, regardless if they get a check or not. You're going to make about the same. Now, as long as they stay elite, you'll make a ton more. They have to start building. Now, what will happen is if they go silver, they'll get the dynamic compression and your check will go down. But what happened? You created a builder, and the volume starts to go out this way. So it kind of expands like that. So when you're going, what I do is I enroll, but when I'm enrolling people, I'm thoroughly going through the entire process. So if you're not finding builders, for example, it's because you're not thoroughly walking through the process. You're not asking the core questions. Like when you're enrolling, you're not asking them to participate in the membership overview. And when you get to the bottom of the membership overview, you're not asking them to participate in the business. Now, if you get in the habit of asking the questions at each phase, you will have more people committing to build. Go ahead and hands up.
Yeah, I don't understand the dynamic compression part, because what I thought it was that if somebody wasn't putting in an LRP order, that the next level would go down to the next level and we start collecting from there. But if they're all on elites, then surely you shouldn't be collecting any dynamic.
Right. Well, here's what happens in the comp plan. So you have elites, you have premiers, you have silvers, golds, or well, we won't include that. Okay, so in the comp plan, there's 7 levels, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it comes across like that. And so in the compression part, if they're not running a full qualified order, then all of the commissions will run up into that position to put 100 or more PV on that spot. That's why if you look at your commission breakdowns, you'll see on level 3 paid at level 2. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. There is a chart that says that in your back office. And so when you look at that, what's happened is that means you had a partially qualified order and the computer compressed them. So ideally, if you have enough team down here, then the volume is compressed to its full levels in there. So you're actually earning on a complete 7 levels. It's not broken. Does that make sense? Now the dynamic part is it has to do with qualification. Because what happens is when you become elite, which is a very important rank, elite is a building block rank, executive and elite. Those are building blocks. If you learn how to build for elite, then you can essentially build a presidential diamond organization, right? Because it's a compounding of elites. That's how it works. So when you achieve elite, that's a major milestone for you. And then you know how to do it. Then you teach someone else how to do it, okay? All right, so elite's only qualifying for 5 levels. doTERRA pays out all 7 levels. There is no breakage in doTERRA's unilevel compensation plan. So where does level, so you have your person here, and they're only qualifying, your elite's only qualifying for 5 levels. Where does 6 and 7 go? Their level 6 rolls to the first qualified premier in the line. The 7th level rolls to the first qualified silver in the line. So that technically means that if you have people here not qualifying for their 7th level, that you would earn 7, 7, 7, 7. You catch that? And 6, 6, all the way down. Not wild? That's the dynamic part of the compression. And so now this plays into your building strategy because now you won't get so concerned about what's happening, right? It relieves some of the emotional state about whether or not people are doing something or not. Okay? Now, what I do is because I walk people through the whole process, I don't have to go through very many non-committed people before I find somebody that's committed. Then when I find a committed person, I'll place them there, and they're going to run a full thing, and I can tell they're committed because they're going to run 125 PV minimum by the 15th. That's my definition of a committed account, okay, by the 15th. Now, what is that? That's the product of the month, right? That means that they're intent on receiving the full benefit that the company has to offer. Now tell me this, how do you represent something that you do not participate in? And so if you're struggling getting people to participate, then you can come back to some of the core fundamentals. What am I doing? If somebody else isn't doing it, you have to come back, you have to bring the question back to you. If my builders aren't building, what am I doing? If my builders aren't exercising the system, what am I doing? If my people are not coming to events, what am I doing? And so if you constantly push that back and you bring it back to yourself, a lot of times you'll find that it's because you're not doing something, or you're not being the leader, you're not representing or creating the pattern. Go ahead.
So if you have, for instance, 15, 20 people that want to share more than assume, but they don't actually want to commit, where do you put it if you are in the...
Right, well here's the thing. If you remember this phrase, one-on-ones lead to classes. I do classes with builders. And it solves that problem. That was heavy, wasn't it? It's heavy. One-on-one. So it looks like this. I make my names list. I talk to my contacts. Most of those are one-on-one appointments. I'm going through the entire process, so then I identify a builder. When I identify the builder, I invite them to host a class. That way I'm always placing their contacts with builders. Now think about a sharer type of thing. I go out, I beg my friends to host classes for me. I promise them all kinds of treats and goodies if they do so. Okay? So they do, because they want the free tube of toothpaste that you offer them. Because that's the most valuable thing when you've been flying for 31 hours. And so you offer them a tube of toothpaste. So they say, yeah, I'd like to host a class for you for a tube of toothpaste. Then you go there and some of their people want to enroll. Where do you put them? underneath, right? Because they're their contacts, except they're not committed. So who supports them? You do. Now, if you continue that pattern, what does that look like?
A burnout.
It looks like a burnout, doesn't it? It looks like you doing a lot of work for a lot of people that are not committed. And then you run into all kinds of enrollership dilemmas. It's an interesting phenomenon. But it's one that I witness all throughout the company, right? Because a lot of people believe they're in a party plan. I am personally a team builder. I'm not a party planner. That's too girly, right? No, I'm just teasing. But when I look at it, the key is presentations, right? And so presentations with builders. Now I have no dilemma about who enrollers are or anything like that. And I start to build, and that creates motivation, right? So I'm posting the same. Now the thing is, I actually don't even have time to work with sharers. If somebody just wants to share, I have so many builders that need my time. So many builders that I could be sitting in a class with, and if I'm enrolling their people, then I have a committed line, I have a CEO, right, that I'm placing under, and now I have duplicated successfully. Otherwise, all I've done is a lot of work, and I'll continue to do a lot of work. As soon as you absorb a line yourself, you will do all the work, which is okay. Maybe you love the work, and the work is great. I love the work too, but at a scale, it doesn't take a very large scale. I mean, I can only be in, 10 classes a week, right? So if I can only be in 10 classes a week, that's an enormous amount of work. So now, does that mean that I don't have classes with sharers? I do once in a while, but primarily it would be to start a new area or something like that, just to get new network, right? To establish or find new contacts. Like if you're struggling to find contacts, maybe if some people will share for you, maybe you can find some people that'll host a class. You can get the activity started. But the key is once you identify a builder, then your focus goes to the CEO, right? So I enroll to find CEOs. So I enroll 10 people to identify one CEO. And then once I identify the CEO, I'm not adding people there so much unless I strategically need to do it. I'm just coming back, I'm focusing on them to help them enroll their contacts. That creates empowerment. If I fill the line with my own enrollments, then that becomes enablement. And then that person becomes entitled, and then it creates drama. Does that make sense?
So you don't do that many personal enrollments?
Very rarely do I give away personal enrollments. Now I do strategically at times if it's not critical to my structure. Okay.
How do you deal with entitlement?
Dealing with entitlement, I think if you start to adopt these philosophies and you just, as a leader, you step into a space, like part of our mission is to create great and powerful leaders. We're developing great and powerful leaders. Now, part of becoming great and powerful is to become empowered. And so to do that, you step into an empowering space, a place where you're confident in what you're creating, and you allow people to come towards you versus chasing them down. Okay? Let's roll through this. How do you approach your business? Like a farmer or like a hunter? Do you approach your prospects like this? And your prospects probably respond like this. No. And that's what they do, because you're hungry, right? You're out to get them, especially if you're being really aggressive about what you want to achieve, and you're being aggressive to your goal over supporting and developing people. Okay, so that's the key. Your goals should be directed at supporting and empowering people. Right? So if your goals get centered on that, then you start developing great and powerful leaders, and it takes care of the problem itself. Then you start becoming a farmer. So if you approach your business like a farmer, you're deploying seeds, right? You're telling people what you do. You give out samples. Hey, I'm sorry I offended you guys. And now the most important principle of the day, the one you sacrificed for. I'll see you guys. Thanks for coming. All right. Here's the thing. If you approach your business like a farmer, then think about how that changes the development of your teams. And so this is part of your question. How do you empower over enabling? Having a hunting mentality forces you to enable people, right? Because they can't do it themselves. And so you enable them. right? They can't do it, so we don't allow them to grow. We pull ourselves back. But a farmer is growing and nurturing